Golden State Media Concepts presents the GSMC Classic Series, with episodes of some of your favorites from a day gone by, a time gone by. Join us as we time travel to some of your classic favorites from yesteryear. The GSMC Podcast Network invites you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the GSMC Classic Series on the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network.
His throat had been slit not more than a minute ago. I started around the corner of the warehouse after the killer. All of a sudden, I spread-eagled in the air, and my head splattered on the pier, and a million stars exploded in front of my eyes. And then all the lights went out.
The New Adventures of Michael Shayne, Private Detective. Michael Shayne, reckless, red-headed Irishman, back again at his old haunts in New Orleans. This is your director, Bill Russo, inviting you to listen to another transcribed episode, which we call The Case of the Generous Killer.
Cutting tax bill urged by... How much difference does that make to a guy who's broke? Manhunt for police slayer Victor Groves. That won't any good news anymore. No, weatherman predicts more rain. Well, maybe
I beg your pardon?
I didn't hear you come in.
I didn't mean to scare you. The sign on your office door said enter. So I did.
Oh, yeah. Well, have a seat.
No, thanks. I always like to stand.
Oh?
When you're only 5 feet tall, you prefer to stand.
Suit yourself. What can I do for you?
Here.
That's a $100 bill.
Yes, for you.
Me? What for?
I don't know much more about it than you, Mr. Shayne.
Look, you must, because I don't know anything about it. How come you're giving me a $100 bill?
Oh, I'm not giving it to you. It's not mine.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's not play guessing.
It says that a man gave me this to give you and gave me one just like it for doing it.
A man who?
A passenger on the Star of Bermuda.
Star of Bermuda? What? Look, friend, I think you better start at the beginning. You're leaving me way behind.
Well, I know it doesn't make much sense, but all I can tell you is what happened. I'm ship's cook on the Star of Bermuda. It's a tramp steamer.
Yeah.
We docked here at New Orleans yesterday, and we're shoving off at dark.
Yeah.
Just about an hour ago, a little before dark it was, a passenger came aboard.
Did he give you his name?
No.
Oh, fine.
He just paid me to bring you this $100 bill.
But didn't he say why? Didn't he tell you what he wanted me to do?
I'm coming to that.
Well, let's have it. What is it?
Mr. Shayne, he's paying you the $100 to come and arrest him.
In a moment, we'll return to Mike Shayne and the case of the generous killer.
Well, the day had made perfect sense. Up to now. I'd had my ham and eggs bright and early, spent most of the morning in the courthouse checking on some records for a client. Most of the afternoon explaining them to him. So there I was, a little after dark, sitting in my office, peacefully reading the newspaper. When a pint-sized ship's cook from a tramp steamer eases into my office, gives me a $100 bill, and tells me a passenger on his boat sent it to me so I'd come down and arrest him. After which the little guy leaves, and I spend about half an hour trying to figure out the deal. Well, I finally gave up, because nothing about it made sense. Except, of course, one thing, a $100 bill. As far as I was concerned, that made very good sense. Seemed like a pretty good reason for me to mosey down to the Star of Bermuda. So I slipped the $100 bill into the solitary confinement of my wallet, went down to the waterfront. The Star of Bermuda was just about the tackiest looking tramp I've seen in a long while. I went up the gangway, The only sign of life was a deckhand lounging against the rail. Hello?
Yeah?
You, got a passenger aboard?
Yeah.
Where's his cabin?
Aft.
How far aft?
Stern.
Oh, look, Chatterbox, do you mind telling me just where? I'm no sea scout.
Only cabin, can't miss it. Probably a light on.
Oh, wait a minute, don't overdo. You better stop for a breath. Thanks.
Welcome.
I started walking toward the stern, my footsteps echoing on the deck. And then, sure enough, I saw a stab of light coming from under a cabin door. No answer. Still no answer. Unlocked. Then I stopped. It looked like my client had decided he couldn't wait to be arrested. He was hanging at the end of a rope, swinging gently back and forth with the motion of the ship, and he was buried dead. I took a long look at the guy, and then I got a very smart idea, which was to get out of there and get out fast. But it was no good. When I got to the door, I ran right into something black and bullish, only this bull didn't have horns.
Who is he, Shane?
You'll probably find this hard to believe, Inspector, but I don't know.
Dykes, cut him down and search him.
Yeah, okay.
Now, let's try it again, Shane. Who is he?
I'm stuck with the same answer, Lefevre. I'd never laid eyes on him until about 10 seconds before you got here.
Yeah.
All I know is this guy sent me a $100 bill by way of the ship's cook to come down here and arrest him. Okay, so I came down. Here he was hanging.
Didn't send word why he wanted to be arrested?
Nope.
Wonder if he knew the net was closing in, thought he'd have a better shake this way.
I don't follow you. You know who this guy is or was?
Dykes.
No identification, Inspector.
There's your answer, Shane.
Yeah, but maybe you got a hunch.
This could be our boy. We don't know. No way to tell now.
Well, he must have given a name when he reserved his cabin.
Ziegler. Doesn't mean a thing. Might as well be Houlihan.
You, wouldn't care to tell me who you think he might be?
That's right.
Huh?
I wouldn't.
Oh. Well, boys, this has been nice. I think maybe, though, I better be getting back to town. That is, of course, if you don't mind.
Oh, we don't mind. We got nothing on you, Shane. Not now. So it might be a good idea for you to get back to town. Only just don't leave town.
Well, of course, all I could do at that point was send Inspector Lefevre an RSVP to his cordial invitation to remain in New Orleans. My RSVP read, "Yes, Inspector." About then, the coroner arrived, and I followed the inspector and Sergeant Dykes down the gangway and along the pier to the street at the end where their car was. There was a little lunch counter nearby with a few assorted floaters lounging around. Among them, a skinny, nervous, slippery character appropriately nicknamed the Weasel. A guy who made his living selling information and anything else he could steal. As I walked by the stand, Weasel looked at me, rolled his cigarette from one side of his mouth to the other, let one of his eyelids droop a little. I got the message. I watched the two plainclothesmen drive away, and sure enough, pretty soon the Weasel eased over to me.
Hello, Mikey.
What's on your mind?
Want to talk to you.
What about?
It's big, Mikey.
And crooked.
Nah, Mikey, you got it wrong. It's big and little.
That'd be the day.
Oh, I'm giving it to you straight. It's hot, Mikey.
Okay, come on. We'll go have a cup of coffee.
Nah. Too many people. Come on. I know where we can talk.
I followed Weasel partway out on the pier again to a deserted warehouse. He slid the door open and motioned me to follow. It was dark as pitch inside, but that seemed to be the way Weasel wanted it.
Now we can talk, Mikey.
Okay, start.
It's about the guy hanging from the rope.
What about him?
That's what I'm telling you. I go aboard that boat to see an old pal, so I'm looking for him back aft. This cabin door is open a little, so I look inside, and there's a guy swinging by his neck.
Well, don't leave me there.
Oh, gee, it really rocks you to see something like that, but then in a minute I kind of got hold of myself when I go on in. And I sort of searched the guy.
Why?
Why? Because, well, I figured I want to find out who he is.
Yeah, you mean you figure you'll lift his wallet?
Oh, now, Mike.
You know, that's about the one thing I figured you'd draw the line at, robbing a dead man.
I tell you,
but I was wrong, I guess. Now, quit trying to sell that yarn about wanting to find out who he is.
Well, okay, Mikey. Fella's got to make a buck somewhere, but I did find out who the guy is, Mikey.
All right, let's have it then.
There was some papers in his wallet, letters, stuff like that, and they show that this guy is Victor Gross.
Victor Gross. The name hit me like a bulldozer. All of a sudden, a lot of things started making sense. His name was in the headlines because Victor Gross was a hired killer, but he was only a name. Nobody had ever seen him except his victims, and they naturally were never in a position to identify him. But why Victor Gross had sent the money to me to arrest him, why he'd decided to hang himself before I got there, still didn't add up. And neither did Weasel's angle in lifting the papers.
Don't you get the pitch, Mikey? You and me. We're the only ones who know the stuff is Victor Gross.
So?
So there ought to be a payoff. The cops probably fork over something to find that out. So then they could call off the hunt.
Got it all figured out, haven't you, Weasel?
Sure. I don't dare go near the cops, but you can. So you handle the arrangements, and we split the take. Right down the middle, huh?
I'll have to think it over.
Think it over nothing. We gotta work fast.
All right, give me the papers. Then.
Oh, no. Weasel keeps the papers.
Come on, let's have them.
No, Mikey.
Give them to me or it's no deal.
But, Mikey,
Give them, I say.
Okay. Only, how do I know I can trust you?
You don't.
Always kidding. Huh, Mikey?
Yeah, always kidding. Look, I'll get in touch with you tomorrow morning near the lunchstand. I'll give you my answer then. In the meantime, I'll keep the papers in a safe place. I put the wallet in my pocket and stepped back out on the pier. Weasel stood watching me as I started down the pier. I wondered if he had a hunch about what was going on in my mind. If he did, there was going to be trouble. Because what was going on in my mind was I was going to march right down to police headquarters and turn those papers in. Yeah, Michael was going to be very law-abiding this time. And then something happened that froze me in my tracks. There was a scream from 50 yards behind me, from Weasel. I whirled around. The scream ended in a horrible gurgle. I pounded back toward him, but he had already crumpled up over on the pier. Even in the dim light, I could see his throat had been cut very recently. I started around the warehouse after the killer. All of a sudden, I was spread eagled in the air, and my head splattered on the pier, and a million stars exploded in front of my eyes. And then all the lights went out.
In a moment, we'll return to Mike Shayne and the case of the generous killer.
It all started when a $100 bill was dropped on my desk by a 5-foot-high ship's cook who told me a passenger on a tramp steamer wanted me to come down and arrest him. So I went and found the passenger swinging from the end of a rope. Inspector Lefevre arrived about then and found no identification on him. Then pretty soon a slippery character named Weasel led me into a warehouse and told me he'd lifted the papers from the dead man. Papers that proved the guy was Victor Gross, a hired killer that nobody'd ever seen. I got the papers away from Weasel and started down the pier. Weasel got his throat cut. I ran around the warehouse after the killer when a hand grabbed my ankle and I knocked myself out on the pier. And then, after a while, the haze started thinning out a little. And there I was, riding along in the backseat of a squad car with one of Lefevre's boys, Sergeant Dykes.
Shane, what are you trying to do? Shake down the police force?
Shake down it. Now, wait a minute, Dykes. Let's have it slow and clear, and from the beginning.
Okay. Only maybe I won't be telling you anything you don't already know. A couple of weeks ago, Victor Gross killed one of the boys on the force.
Yeah, I read the papers.
Then we find you standing in the stateroom watching a man swinging at the end of a rope.
Look, Sergeant, I told you the ship's cook brought me a $100 bill from this passenger to come down and arrest him.
And we left you, we drove around the block and walked back to the ship. The cook tells us he hasn't been ashore all day.
Well, he's lying.
Says he hardly ever goes ashore. Hates land. Weighs a shade over 300 and has trouble getting around.
300? Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. So we start down the gangway going to look for you. But you save us the trouble. There's a scream farther out on the pier and then someone running. We got out and find a stoolie named Weasel lying dead and you unconscious. Then we find Victor Gross' identification papers on you.
I got them from the Weasel. He lifted them from the dead man.
Oh, yeah.
Look, Dykes, you got it all wrong. Gross committed suicide.
You don't boil, Shane. The knots in the rope and some of the bruises on Gross's neck told us it was no suicide. It was murder. He was strangled.
Well, Well, about that time, I was willing to sell my Social Security number very cheap. 2 murders, with me sitting in the chief suspect's chair on both of them. I guess it was a little after 1 in the morning when my cell door opened and clanged shut again. I looked up. Inspector Lefevre was standing there.
Shane.
Hello, Inspector.
Let's talk.
Why, it's been a losing game for me so far.
Seems to be quite a case against you.
Yeah, according to just about everybody but me. Look, Inspector, I didn't kill Gross. I didn't lift his papers, and I didn't kill the weasel.
That might be kind of hard to prove. About the weasel, that is.
Well, maybe somebody will tell me how I managed to slit his throat, get rid of the knife, and then knock myself out.
You could have managed it.
Okay.
But I don't think you did.
But what?
No, I don't think you killed the weasel, and I'm pretty sure you didn't kill Victor Groves.
Well, what do you think I've been trying to tell you boys all night?
Yeah. You know, Shane, the passenger who was choked to death, we identified him. He is not Victor Groves.
He's not Groves?
Mm-mm.
Well, then...
And it adds up why Weasel was killed.
Because the real Victor Groves found out Weasel had lifted the papers from the dead man and thought Weasel still had them.
Could have been that way.
It has to be that way, Inspector. Look, Victor Groves knows you're out to get him, so he gets a drifter from the waterfront into that stateroom on the tramp steamer. He kills the guy, plants his own papers on him, strings him up to make it look like suicide, and then he... Hey, wait a minute. That little guy who brought me the 100 said he was the ship's cook. He must have been the real Victor Groves.
That's the way it's beginning to look, Shane. He wants you to come down, discover the body. Then everybody thinks Groves committed suicide, the case is closed, and the pressure's off the real Groves.
That little guy. Who would have ever figured that he... I can't even remember much what he looked like.
Try to remember, will you?
Yeah, but I wasn't paying much attention. I remember he was very small.
What about the face?
Thin face. Straight nose. Dark eyes. That's about it.
Not enough.
It's the best I can do.
All right. We're releasing you, Shane.
Well, I won't say it's about time, Inspector, but it is about time. Hey, wait a minute. Anyone besides the police force know that the dead passenger's been identified as someone other than Groves?
No.
That's what I thought. And something else. Does anyone know I've been arrested and don't have Groves' papers on me anymore?
Nobody outside knows that.
Thanks a lot. I'll stay here.
We're letting you go.
I like it here all of a sudden.
You can't stay here, Shane.
Look, I know what you've been leading up to. As far as Groves is concerned, I've still got the papers. You think I'm going to walk the streets of New Orleans waiting for him to make a pass at me?
We do.
Now, get yourself another boy. This one just quit.
One of our boys will tell you he'll grab Groves if Groves comes after you.
Look, Inspector, you don't know what you're asking me to do.
You're wrong there, Shane. I know just what I'm asking you to do. Make a target out of yourself. You know why?
I don't care why. I'm not going to...
Because a killer's still running around loose. A killer nobody can identify, and he'll strike again soon because he guns not only for hire but for pleasure. He's vicious. He's got to be stopped, and this is one way that might work. Now, how about it?
Look, Inspector, you and your boys have been giving me a rough time. You throw me in a clink, you... Okay, I'll do it.
Well, this ought to do, Shane.
Sure, thanks. One place is as good as another.
You got it straight now.
2 straight. I'm to go back to my office building and start out. Alone, on foot.
Right. Keep away from crowds and keep away from the brightly lit streets.
Oh, fine. What am I supposed to do, roost in a dark alley somewhere?
Just keep away from the bright lights. And get this. When you leave your office building, walk south a block. Then go any direction you want, because that's the point our boys start tailing you from. 1 block south of your office.
Yeah.
There's one more thing.
What is it?
Good luck.
I found an all-night cab stand and grabbed a taxi back to my office building. Just as I was going to start walking, a woman came out of the building and crossed the street. A short woman. And then as I stood there watching her, it dawned on me. As I turned north in sort of a daze, I was realizing my job was just twice as tough as I'd thought. Because it had just hit me that Victor Groves was plenty small enough to pass for a woman. By the time I digested that pleasant thought, I realized I was about 1.5 blocks from my office. I slowed down, looked around. Streets were pretty deserted. I spotted the car as soon as it turned the corner and came toward me very slowly. I stopped. The car kept coming. I was hoping Inspector Lefebvre's boy was awfully close and ready. Then the car was slowing still more. I got opposite me and it stopped. The window toward me started rolling down, but I couldn't see inside, so I waited, and then...
Hey, Bud,
How do I get to St. Louis Street from here?
I told him. Stood there watching him drive away. Took out my handkerchief and mopped my face a little. Then I started walking again. A little lady with a tray of flowers had been standing near the entrance of a bar, started crossing a narrow street toward me. I stopped. She had a shawl over her head, and she was short. I stood there and watched as she came up to me.
A flower, monsieur? A flower for your lapel, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. You're working late tonight.
Oh, oui, I always work late. Here, a nice carnation.
Okay, thanks, here.
Oh, merci, monsieur. Oh, but monsieur, it is too much. Monsieur!
But I was already around the corner. I didn't somehow care about staying in one place too long. The thing was getting to me a little. It seemed like all the inhabitants of New Orleans that I'd seen in the last half hour had shrunk about 6 inches suddenly. Like the guy coming down the sidewalk toward me right now. I couldn't tell where he'd come from. He was just suddenly there. I was right near the mouth of an alley, and for a minute I was tempted to dive into it. But I just stood there waiting. He was taking his time, like the other people I'd waited for. I couldn't see his face. It was pretty close now. For the third time, I was hoping Lefebvre's boy had the situation well in hand. Then the guy was right in front of me.
Hey, pal. Happen to have a light on you?
I still couldn't see his face. I couldn't tell from his voice, so I took a match out of my pocket. I held it out and scratched it with my thumbnail. A little flame spurted up and outlined his face. It was a round face. It didn't belong to Victor Groves. The guy puffed a couple of times on a cigarette, thanked me, and walked off. I leaned against the building for a minute. I was having that letdown feeling of relief again. So when I heard the dog whimpering with pain in the alley behind me, I didn't even hesitate. I walked into the alley. As soon as I did, I realized there was no dog. There never had been. It was just a little too late, though. A hand shot around my throat. I could feel the point of a knife in my ribs, and there was a soft voice in my ear.
Well, Mr. Shayne, we meet again, don't we?
In a moment, we'll be back with a thrilling climax to tonight's Michael Shayne adventure.
Throat told me I wasn't supposed to say anything. Victor Groves had gotten to me at last. Inspector Lefebvre's boy was nowhere in sight.
Now, Mr. Shayne, the identification papers, please.
I don't have them on me, Victor.
Please. I have very little time.
I tell you, I don't have them on me.
They're not in your office. I've searched it thoroughly. You do not have them on you. So I have wasted my time following you. But perhaps it will not be entirely a waste of time, Mr. Shayne.
What do you mean?
Simply that under the circumstances, I fortunately have no other alternative but to dispose of you.
Oh, look.
Quiet.
I'd heard the scuffling steps a second or two before and was hoping Groves hadn't heard them, but he had. We just stood there in the alley, and I knew if I made a single sound, I'd get that knife, all 6 inches of it. The steps came nearer to the mouth of the alley. Then they turned into the alley. And a little figure loomed up in front of us. The scream pulled Groves' eyes off me just long enough. I swung my elbow back hard. I was lucky. The knife went flying across the alley. Then I got hold of one of those fingers that were wrapped around my throat. I put everything I had into it. It was just enough. The fingers snapped and the hand fell away, and I swung my fist hard. Victor Groves bounced off the wall and flopped to the ground and lay still. Just then a flashlight stabbed into the alley. A big guy followed it in. It was Lefebvre's boy. So everything was okay. And then I remembered the little old woman. She was cowering over on one side of the alley, trembling. I went over to her. It was the flower lady. Of all the people I was expecting, you weren't the one.
But I was following you. I saw you enter the alley from down the block.
Yeah, but why?
You would not stop. I called to you. You gave me too much money, monsieur.
What are you talking about? I gave you $1 and told you to keep
but
the
that
change.
is just it, monsieur. It was not $1. It was a $100 bill.
What?
I knew you had made a mistake. I had to return it to you.
Well, You know that it's quite a nice touch. Grows his own $100 bill is the thing that traps him.
What, monsieur?
Nothing. Look, do me a favor. Keep the dough, will you? I kind of think you earned it. Well, that was just about that. Except I had a bone to pick with Inspector Lefevre. Later in his office, I brought it up. You know, that plainclothesman of yours who was supposed to be tailing me, Inspector, he wasn't exactly Johnny on the spot. I was beginning to think he'd never show up.
He almost didn't, but it wasn't his fault. He was lucky to find you at all.
What do you mean?
You remember what your instructions were about leaving your office tonight?
Well, yeah, I was to walk south a block, and your boy would start tailing me from there.
Right. You, maybe had a lot on your mind when you left your office?
Yeah, I'll say. I just realized Groves might be disguised as a woman. I guess Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
You
walked north instead of south.
You mean all the time your boy wasn't even close?
That's right. You were all alone.
Inspector, you know where I could get a good compass cheap?
This is your director, Bill Russo, again. Our story is based on characters created by Brett Halliday. The music is composed and conducted by John Duffy, and Michael Shayne is portrayed by Jeff Chandler. The New Adventures of Michael Shayne is a Don W. Sharp production, transcribed in Hollywood and distributed exclusively by the Broadcasters Guild. Next week, you'll hear Michael Shayne in another thrilling adventure from mysterious and colorful New Orleans.
You've been listening to the GSMC Classic Series, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Follow us at www.gsmcpodcast.com and find all of our timeless programming by typing GSMC Classics into any podcast app, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and more. Remember to subscribe to the GSMC Classic Series podcasts of your choice to stay up to date on new episodes. And if you could take a minute to give us a nice review, that really helps us to get this ageless programming out to others who would enjoy it just as much as you have. Check out all of our GSMC Classic Series podcasts. Whether you're in the mood for comedy, romance, adventure, history, science fiction, horror, or anything in between, the GSMC Classic Series has you covered. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program on the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network.